Please remain standing for a moment of silence for community members who passed away, who served the town. Lou Schwartz, who was a former councilman, Naomi Kramer from our Community Relations Advisory Board, Abe Martin, who was a former police officer, and Winifred Ferreira. Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call.
Councilman Castle?
Present.
Councilwoman Rice?
Here.
Councilman Schwartz?
Here.
Councilman Son?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Pruitt? Deputy Mayor Katz?
Here.
Mayor Hamidi?
Here.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by resolution number 261-2016, sending a copy to the newspapers officially designated for 2017. By way of resolution number 270-2016, filing a copy in the Township Clerk's office and posting on the Municipal Building Bulletin Board. And the Mayor hereby directs that the statement be included in the minutes.
Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting. We also have with us our Township Manager, William Broughton, our Township Clerk, Isa Abbasi, our Keyboard and Clerk Typist 1, Omar Staval, Summer Intern, Jonathan Linder. Outside is our Building Maintenance Worker, Clarence Barnes. Our volunteer cablecaster, as always, Ron Goodman, and our Township Attorney, John Shadadian, from the law firm of Chasen, Lamparello, Mallon, and Capuzzo. The next televised council meeting will take place on Tuesday, September 19, 2017, with public input beginning at 8 p.m. The September 11th commemorative ceremony will take place on Monday, September 11th, beginning at 8:30 a.m. The ceremony will be held at the rear entrance of the municipal building. Council met in closed sessions to discuss the following items: library board interviews, health insurance premiums, library board memorandum of understanding, contract discussion of sale of furniture, legal issues, and litigation updates. Okay, the first items, we're going right into miscellaneous from work session items. Actually, wait, we have a certificate of appreciation for Jonathan Linder? And do we have? Wonderful. Okay, thanks. Isa?
Good evening. So tonight we'll be the council will be presenting a certificate of appreciation for one of our fabulous summer interns, Jonathan Linder. You know, I joked with John that 11 years ago I was an intern for the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C., and I was tasked with FOIA. FOIA is Freedom of Open Information Act, the same as Oprah. So I guess as an 11-year veteran, I got sick of it after 2 weeks and I pawned it off to another intern. But Jonathan didn't, and Jonathan stuck through it since May when he came on board, and he has been so energetic in our office that he actually tires me out, and as a 3-time marathoner, I didn't think anyone could really tire me out. But he's been a great asset. He's very versatile. He's willing to help the building department. He always asks me, well, what are we doing next? Are we going to the trailers to look up documents? We're going to miss him. He's going back to Ramaz Upper School on the east side. We'll miss him starting tomorrow. He's been a fabulous asset this summer, and I can't say enough about him. So thank you, Jonathan, for your service. I'll let the mayor read your certificate into the record and call you some more.
So, Jonathan, Teaneck Township Council extends its heartfelt thank you to Jonathan Linder for his outstanding service and dedicated service while assisting in many capacities as an intern with the Township of Teaneck. Best of luck in all your future endeavors. This is for you. But I also like to say, one of the things that I enjoyed this summer was, every time I walked in, you had a smile on your face. And you were just happy to serve, and you were always looking for things to do. It was a joy to have you in our office. You're, just like our past interns who come in and who learn, we hope that you take a lot away from how we do things here, as well as the attitude that William Broughton and Isa portray as our township leadership. So congratulations and thank you. And Mark Schwartz for finding him. and bringing them over.
I'll just say a quick word. I met Mr. Linder at the the Downing Street meeting we had with the residents, which was a very contentious meeting. And there was this kid there that kept asking questions. I'm like, this is like 25-year-old that's asking all these smart questions. He looks like he's 15. And then afterwards I found out I think you were like 15 or 16 years old. And I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. And then you wanted to work for free for the township. And I'm like, this is great. So thank you very much. It's been great for you. I hope it's been great. Definitely been great for us. And we hope to see you again in the very near future.
I also had the opportunity to work with Jonathan. He was supporting my office for several days, answering the phone, making copies. He's a great young man. You did an excellent job, Jonathan. I appreciate. He also makes a really good apple pie. He made an apple pie from scratch and brought it in. And I think I must have had the last piece a couple minutes ago, but he's a great kid, and we're looking for great things from you, Jonathan. So thank you for your service. Appreciate it.
I would just encourage you to go to get your license to be a registered municipal clerk. It's a great way to move your way up in the township. So if you want to come back, go to school for that. I'm sure we'd be happy to have you.
Thank you.
Jonathan, I just asked Ellie, were you a high school student or college student? Because you present yourself as such a mature young man. I didn't realize that you were just in high school. But we appreciate your dedication and your volunteerism. I'm sure you learned a lot and that you gained as much as we received from you. So thank you so much for your time here with us this summer.
I got so many compliments about you, but a lot of them were from your grandmother, who I live next to. But great job. Thank you very much for your time and your dedication. We really appreciate it. And come back and visit us during the holidays.
So I had a chance, again, not only to appreciate your volunteerism, Jonathan, but also to give you a ride back home and carpool after the last meeting. And not only did you appreciate the lift, but you had some concrete ideas about how we could do things better, what works, what changes we might be able to make. Some very, very insightful changes for a man of your age. And again, your service is appreciated, and I hope that you'll have future opportunities to serve the Township of Teaneck. Thank you very much.
Come on up, we'll take a picture. Come on, set it up right. It's all right, we'll do it right so you can get the entire thing in the background. No, over here we go. Right here. In the front. I'd also like to recognize my home economics teacher, Carol Otis, who's in the audience, who's also the president of the chairwoman of Bergen Community College. I know you lift up, all of a sudden I see you, I'm like turning back into 13 years old. I'm just like, oh, I hope I don't do anything wrong.
He wants to know if you could change some of his permanent record, though.
It was junior high. There was no permanent record.
Okay, well, don't tell that to John.
Oh, don't tell it, yeah. I got jokes. All right, first item on tonight's work session is miscellaneous. Does anybody have anything? Old business? Anyone?
Miscellaneous. On October 26th, I'll be sponsoring a responsible financial and responsible investing workshop. It's going to be happening at the Rota Center. It's going to go from 6:30 to 8. We've invited individuals from the SEC as well as FINRA to come and talk about some of the most common traps that investors find themselves falling into as it relates to having investors who are not on an annual basis checking with them to ensure that their risk tolerance is the same. If they find themselves falling victim to unsavory investments, just to let them know what their rights are, but also a component of the workshop will be to educate people on responsible investing, so that they know what questions to ask when they start out, whether they are young, middle-aged, or, ready to retire. But whatever it is, it's really just a seminar to put out information that a lot of people don't know about. And I know that we have a number of individuals in our community who fell victim to the financial crisis a few years ago. And this would be a very good opportunity for them to ask some questions from some noteworthy professionals about what their ability is to recover what damages they may have endured. So that'll be on October 26th. I'll say it again at our next meeting, but just for people who want to pencil in on their calendar now.
Great. Anything else under old business? William, nothing? New business?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate to the Library Board Benjamin Burnett and Ruth Gillott.
I'll second that nomination. And then we'll vote on it at the next meeting. Okay. Anything from communications? I did have one communications that I gave over to the manager, which was from a resident who had a license suspended. It's something that it looks like it's a state issue, so I instructed the manager to just respond appropriately. Committee reports. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the zoning subcommittee met, and we discussed a few items. One of them was the DPW facility, both the one on Teaneck Road and on River Road. We didn't get into any real details other than obviously the one on Teaneck Road. We'd like to see the RFP go out, or whatever it is that needs to go out already. We spoke about parking off of Palisades. This is something that I was talking to Councilman Sohn about, that we did a real good job with the additional surprise parking lot by the Rhoda Center, and seeing that parking is becoming a real issue by the park. Is there potential for the property that's covered with brush right now to do similar? We were advised that most of it, if not all of it, belongs to the CSX. Sign ordinance, the council received a memo from the planning board secretary requesting the uniformity be adopted, correct? And zoning subcommittee recommends that, as long as there's no objection on the council. If we can just ask the attorney to start preparing that change.
What do we need to do to go ahead with that, with eliminating uniformity? I think it makes no sense. It's an interference to a lot of businesses that want to move forward. What do we need to do to move ahead?
Just a change of the ordinance, right? We just remove. It's literally one line.
Can we have a motion? Do we need a motion to ask the attorney to do that?
John.
Can do that by way of a motion or resolution.
So I second your motion. Do you want to do a quick roll call on that motion?
Yeah. To eliminate uniformity from the sign.
Alan, if you want to just quickly, for those who don't understand, just explain quickly, unless you want to ask with the mayor's permission.
There's a resident expert sitting in the audience, but again, there are certain businesses that have a style of sign, and there's an expectation that additional businesses coming in will create signs that are consistent with the other businesses. If that makes sense for them, great. If it doesn't, I don't know why we're stopping businesses from moving forward.
When I first came on the planning board, and I remember it was like my fourth meeting, and I said it then and I'll say it now, is I never drove around this town in my 35 years and said that sign doesn't belong here. And I think that we gave a lot of people a lot of hard time through a regulation. Now, that doesn't mean, when we're saying no regulations, it doesn't mean that we're going to have neon signs and all those things that'll still stay, that aren't still allowed. But the uniformity, I think, that has taken its toll. Has taken its cycle, and it's not going to work. So I think that we should eliminate that.
I just wanted to recognize our two planning board members that are here tonight who are concerned about this and came here to support that, Howard Rose and Keith Kaplan.
Sounds
that
good.
he's not here as a representative of the planning board, maybe the Board of Education, but.
Great. All right, so we have a motion. Gotcha,
Okay.
okay.
All right, the next item is,
Do you need a roll call?
oh,
Can you do a roll call, please?
Yes, motion by Councilman Sol, seconded by Deputy Katz. Councilman Council?
Yes.
Councilman Robbie Rice?
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz?
Yes.
Councilman Sol?
Yes.
Deputy Pruitt?
Can we repeat the motion so I can know?
Yes, the motion is to eliminate uniformity on signage for businesses.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
I misunderstood what we were doing.
No, I'm changing my vote to no.
Okay. Deputy Pruitt?
Yes.
Okay. Deputy Katz?
yes.
Mayor Neely?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great.
Okay. The next item we spoke about was to work on some type of parking fund. We recognize that there is a parking need here in Teaneck. The concept, I guess, was to, maybe developments that have X amount of square feet, and then this is just why we have to work on it with the attorney. Let's say they do 10,000 square feet of new development, then they should have to pay maybe 5 cents per square foot into this fund. And we understand that it's a drop in the bucket, and we also recognize that it's not going to absolve them of their parking requirements. It's just more of them contributing to this bucket, and a lot of drops will hopefully fill up the bucket, and one day we can turn around, we can say, listen, if we need to bond something, well, we have X amount of thousands of dollars from the last 10 years or 5 years of collecting for a parking fund. So the different parameters have to be set, which is how much, who, et cetera, but that's the concept. All right? And then the last item was, and we didn't have any real specifics, but we've had some requests for some street name honorees and some other honorariums, and we were just talking about that, and that's it.
Great. Anybody else have a committee report? Go ahead.
The Youth Advisory Board is holding its next meeting on Wednesday, September 27th. They did have a good opportunity to speak with students in the park at the Teaneck Night Out, and they have 22 new registered students that were demonstrated an interest. That letter had been forwarded to ISA, and so registration information will go out to those interested students.
Anyone else? Alan?
We've not formally met in terms of monuments and memorials, and I think it would behoove us to have an opportunity to meet. But we've gotten some feedback on a number of fronts. One is a grant. I know Dr. Pruitt spoke about this from the state for $85,000. The Enslaved African Memorial Committee has a website that is up and running, has information about the project, has information about the architect that is going to be working on this project. And I think that in terms of the first item that we're going to be talking about as a council-listed item, a resolution, condemning hate groups, I think probably the best thing that we can do as a township is to have information and education about the impact of hate in the past, and to have people learning about those different experiences. Both the Holocaust Memorial Committee and the Enslaved African Memorial Committee have been making steps moving forward, and I think that this is the best possible way that we can send a message as a township that we are standing up to hate by recognizing these events and providing that information both outside on our municipal green and in our library.
Okay. Anyone else? The Environmental Commission has put forward an ordinance that they would like us, the Planning Board, and the Shade Tree Advisory Board to look at. It's a similar ordinance they have in Teaneck, where basically if you cut down more than 4 trees, you have to plant more trees. So my suggestion is to send it over to the Planning Board and everybody else for comment. Next item on, does anybody else have anything else from any of their committees? Anything from Parks? Mark?
No, we have not had our meeting this month. It's canceled in August. Tomorrow night we'll have our meeting at 7:45 in the Rota Center.
Gotcha. Okay. So now next to council listed items, resolution condemning KKK, and I'd just like to amend that to neo-Nazis and white supremacy from me. So I have a resolution that I'd like to walk in, and I'll read it, or can you read it into the record, Issa?
This should be.
Does everybody have a copy of it?
Actually,
Did you give a copy to council or no?
I have copies for the public. Yes,
Do you have copies?
Yes.
You give us
For council, for the council.
For council members.
So this is resolution number 184-2017, and copies are being placed on the dais for the public. Whereas on August 11th and 12th, 2017, members of the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, and other white supremacists marched in the streets of Charlottesville, Virginia, brandishing anti-Semitic placards, Confederate battle flags and torches, and preaching hatred, bigotry, and violence. And whereas when confronted by counter-demonstrators, they responded with violence, culminating in a speeding automobile ramming into a crowd of anti-racist protesters, killing 32-year-old Heather Heyer and injuring at least 19 others. And whereas our nation was founded on the principles that all men and women, quote, are created equal, end quote, and quote, that they endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, end quote. And whereas there is no place in American society for racism, hatred, bigotry, or violence directed against any person or group by reason of ethnicity, race, color, creed, national origin, gender, or sexual orientation. And whereas, as Americans, we must stand united in firmly condemning any person or group which espouses such racism, hatred, bigotry, and violence, and acknowledge and declare to ourselves and to the world that those who espouse such doctrines are evil and pose a threat to all of humanity. And whereas the Township of Teaneck is a multicultural community comprised of citizens of different races, colors, creeds, and national origins. And whereas the Township Council is representative of such different racial, ethnic, religious, and cultural backgrounds. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Teaneck, the Township of Teaneck stands united with its citizens in reaffirming our belief in the dignity of all persons regardless of ethnicity, race, color, creed, national origin, gender, or sexual orientation, and in recommitting ourselves to working together to bring about unity and justice amongst all peoples, and to be it further resolved that with one voice we join together in opposing racism, hatred, bigotry, and violence directed against any person or group by reason of ethnicity, race, color, creed, national origin, gender, or sexual orientation, and in denouncing the views espoused by the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and their supporters as contrary to the very principles and ideals upon which we as a nation hold dear. So this is Resolution 184-2017.
I'd like to add that to the consent agenda with unanimous consent in a second, please.
Mayor, can I just ask you a quick question? I very much support this resolution. I think maybe this is less of a question for you and maybe for our attorney or even the manager. So over the last couple of years, we've been the recipients of very disheartening emails where we will find out that someone has painted either, spray painted a swastika or some vile word or phrase on property. And I know that we have ongoing investigations, and some of them, have come to a close, but is there some way that we can have an ordinance, some level of enforcement that when someone is convicted, at least in Teaneck, or arrested for such a crime, that there's an additional hate crime fine that can be paid, or some added level of
John, would you like to jump in here?
Yeah, I have to look at that issue, but I think that the state statutes on hate crime are probably going to be considered to preempt that whole area. They're pretty extensive.
Yeah.
The 2C statutes in New Jersey for hate crimes, and the penalties are pretty severe. So I don't know that we're going to be permitted to add any extra penalty, if you would, to what the state statute already says. I don't think you can do that. I can look at that, but I don't think you can do that.
And I'm asking in the context of, if somebody is if someone gets a DUI in town, there are local ordinances as well as state statutes. And in this particular instance, if someone violates our community through, some egregious hateful act, why can't we have an ordinance in place that would also levy some type of local financial penalty? We're transforming the municipal green, into a space where everyone is going to feel welcome. Why can't we also levy a penalty that could go towards?
It's an interesting idea. I've never heard it raised before, but I can certainly look at that and see if we can add that on in addition to the state hate crime penalty, which, like I said, there's certainly a victim of crimes fund and everything like that. So I don't know if the town, what end of that the town receives. I don't know if Mr. Brown can comment on that, but that's certainly something we can look at.
Okay,
I will look at.
I will follow up with you on that. If we can do it for a DUI. I think we should be able to do it for a hate crime or.
My only concern with that is that the distinction between Title 39 and 2C.
All right.
So whether, I don't know if there's an exception, you know, if Title 39 is considered a non-criminal. So that's the traffic statute, Title 39.
Okay, so we're going to put this, guys, can we just stick to this one, and then we'll talk about everything else later. Can we put this, are we in favor of putting this on the consent agenda tonight?
All in
Do we have a
favor?
second? Yes. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay.
Great, thanks. Okay, you want to comment on the resolution?
Yeah, I want to comment on the resolution.
Go ahead.
First of all, I want to commend the mayor. I need technology. I want to commend the mayor for writing the statement, and I'm disappointed in the elected officials across the country are not saying much. And it's very disturbing to me to watch the torchlight parade in Charlottesville, because I was around when the KKK was marching around with torches in the civil rights struggle. And the thing that disturbed me most of all is that the torchbearers in Charlottesville didn't even need masks. That's scary. And then when you add to that, the president pardoning a sheriff who was guilty of human rights violations. My question to everybody is, do these kinds of actions empower the negative human rights components in our society to do more bad stuff? So I looked on the internet, and the Southern Poverty Law Center has identified 40 groups in New Jersey that are hate groups. We're going to have to be very vigilant over the next several months and years, because it's really a bad time to live right now in terms of America, and I'm disappointed, and I'm glad that Mohammed wrote that statement, and I'm sure we're going to all endorse it.
Thank you. I just want to give you on a high note, Dr. Pruitt. Just remember that they did, I think there was trying to have a rally of white supremacists and neo-Nazis and KKK in Boston, and they came up with like 300 people, and there was 20,000 counter-protesters. So I think, you know, it's just people have been awakened by something that has always been there and lingering under the surface. I think that in 2017, I think a lot more people become emboldened. And even after you see in town where you see hate has no home here, I think you're seeing a lot more people coming together than a lot more divisions. So within this crisis, there's an opportunity. And I think that, again, as I said the night after at the rally, was, you know, we need to meet more and we need to meet our neighbors more. And there are a lot of people who are meeting all over the town. They just haven't come together yet. And I think that when they do, it's going to be an interesting time, because I think that there are a lot of good people who are awakened, who are really disgusted by some of the things that are going on.
Let me add one more thing. I'm very impressed this year with the number of block parties. There seem to be more block parties this summer than in the past, and that's a great way to meet your neighbors, and I think that'll help us to get along and understand each other better.
Alan, did you want to comment on the resolution?
Again, it's a rather sad commentary that it's necessary. You never thought you would have to tell anybody this is necessary. In the past, we've sent copies of resolutions. I think this is one where we may want to send one copy of this to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, because I think there's some sentiments in here that might have been used appropriately by the president. And I think that, again, we also need to not only condemn hate, but I think, as Dr. Pruitt said, you know, take proactive efforts to build connections between our residents in a remarkably diverse community.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
That I also applaud your mention of this, because there's a quote from Martin Luther King: "In the end, we will be remembered not for the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." And by the fact of you making this resolution, it makes a clear statement that we're not just being silent about these issues, but that we are being very proactive about our community and the celebration of the diversity of our community. So thank you.
With that, you know, the next item on tonight's agenda is preparations for September 11th commemoration. I did get an email from Dean Kaczynski. There's a meeting on Thursday at 1 p.m. All the members and the agenda has been set. So members of the public and members of council, if you can join us that day. What time are we starting, William? At 8:30?
Yes.
8:30 a.m. on September 11th. Next item on tonight's agenda is the naming of we had a request, Lou Schwartz room naming at the Richard Roner Center. Councilman Castle will put it on the agenda. I think that we should all be in agreement about this, that this is something that we can move forward with. Anybody object? Anybody have anything else?
Really,
Okay.
just to give credit where credit is due for the two residents who actually brought it to our attention and proposed this. And I don't think it would have been something that would have escaped our consciousness, but I want to thank them, Ms. Sandy Loft and Ms. Jane Irwin, for writing this letter to council and reminding us. Mayor, as you said at the very beginning, we've lost a number of residents since our last meeting who have been really tremendous contributors to our community and the peaceful nature of our community. And Lou Schwartz is just one of those individuals who happened to be the eldest of those. So I echo your sentiments, but I really hope that we are able to name a room in the Richard Roder Center in his honor for his tireless service and obviously after his passing.
Right. The next is resolution opposing a proposed gun reciprocity law that Dennis Hirschfelder and Ron Schwartz had presented at the July meeting. I apologize, Dennis, that we don't have it with us tonight, that you gave it to Issa. Issa can't seem to grab it, but if we could just put that on the September 9th consent agenda for passage. I just need a second to put it on the agenda for those.
I can just talk about that for a second. I'm not really favoring this. That this is there's a lot of laws out there. I mean, we can spend our entire council talking about laws being passed by New Jersey, by the county, by the country. I don't have a gun, but there's what are we trying to do here?
Basically, what we're trying to do is that gun rights should be regulated by the states. And that's basically what it says. So whatever they do in Georgia, you can feel free to do in Georgia, but you're not going to do that in New Jersey. That's what basically this resolution is about.
That's just we're basically trusting New Jersey and their laws for everything we want to live by.
Well, those are the people we elect. Yeah,
I'm not really sure about that.
That's fine, but I don't want to live with Georgia gun laws either. So I think that look, you can vote against it. I think it's a philosophical difference. The gun debate is a very, very complicated debate for a lot of people. But this is something that I think that it's always been regulated by the states. I've talked to gun advocates about this also, who also agree with me that this should be regulated by the state also.
I'm not going to be in favor of this.
That's fine. That's fine. I just need a second to put it on the next agenda. Second. Okay. So there's a motion by me, seconded by Councilwoman Romney Rice, and we'll put it on the September 19th agenda. Okay, next item, train safety and CCT, closed-circuit TV. Deputy Mayor Katz.
Yeah. This is something that we've spoken about for a while, but what sparked this again was that just like 3-4 weeks ago, here's an article in the Post, August 11th, 2017. Al-Qaeda eyes trains and subways as new targets. They want to exploit the relatively lax security procedures protecting America's railroads and attack trains. Then they have another one, Channel 7, ABC. This is August 14th. That trains in the United States, including many that roll in and out of Chicago, are a new target. This was, I guess, the Chicago area, Channel 7. But this is no secret that the CSX tracks are really exposed here in Teaneck. Whether CSX itself is doing proper security procedures, I don't know what they're doing. But I would request that from our side, that at least we have a camera that we have on our footbridges facing each direction so that we can have a quick watchful eye of what's going on above the tracks. And as long as we're putting a camera, let's put one under the tracks as well.
I'm totally in favor of that.
In the tunnel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Under the tracks in the tunnel.
William, and then Alan, hold on, William, is this something that's, that we can get started on if we have council support, the logistics of it?
I think it's important. I think it's needed. We can definitely start working on it. We would need to include it in our budget for next year because there's going to be an ongoing cost. We need to, have a way to get those signals. We got to purchase the cameras and we got to get the signal back to the monitoring location, which means that we got to use some sort of service to get that signal back there. So we got to develop a network that's capable of carrying that signal. So.
Right. I just don't want to see this turn into like a 2-year project, where, God forbid something happens while we're sitting there trying to. The reality, I'm not, we don't have to go into the details now, but there is a CAD line that's run to the firehouse.
Those lines would not be capable of carrying that type of signal that distance. You need a Verizon, an Optimum,
Okay, so,
something like that.
Alan, and then if you can start that process and report back at the next meeting?
Okay.
Alan?
Sure. So my suggestion is, again, we have bridges at State Street, at Route 4, at Sagamore, at Cedar Lane, and basically having cameras facing north and south on both sides which would give us coverage of the overwhelming majority of the tracks. You might lose a little bit at the south end and at the north end, but this is an opportunity to use some existing resources that we have to take the advantage of that elevation. And I think, again, also to look at the pedestrian underpass at West Englewood Avenue as another protection. But, remember, people can walk up. You can walk up and touch those trains and do whatever you'd like. There is nothing that stops you, and all you have to do is look at the placard and look up what's on them. This is an exposure that we have, and I think CSX's protection steps are utterly inadequate.
And it happens to be just on that. People do walk up. Like Teaneck is known as a train buff area to come and stand and watch and,
Okay. Go ahead.
Comment that while I'm in favor of supporting that, I just think it's interesting that we talk about terrorism from Al-Qaeda when domestic terrorists that carry guns from other borders are probably a greater concern. I just wanted to make that comment.
Also, we really need to have a push to have CSX monitor their own tracks. We're only monitoring a very small section of the track in Teaneck, which runs from Selkirk, New York, to Hoboken. So there needs to be, that's a push we need to make on them as well.
I've met with 2 senators on this, U.S. sitting senators. In the 10 years that I've been on council, we've been going over this, and it's been my predecessors who've been trying to make things, do CSX, to make them, unless we're prepared to litigate, and there's nothing that says that we're going to win that litigation. There's very little we can do. There's even with our state laws coming in right now, that was vetoed and that's going to be overridden. They're just going to supersede it with federal law, and it's going to be tied up. They do what they want to do, and I know you've had that same experience with them, where basically we come in there and they're like, you know what, we took this meeting because we had to, but we're really not going to listen to anything that you had to say, and it's frustrating. But until we find U.S. congressmen and senators who can change the law, we're going to be in this predicament. So we have no choice but just protecting it ourselves. Okay, next item.
Yeah.
Dr. Pruitt, progress on affordable housing monitor.
Yeah, we have one building that's almost finished. I don't know if he'll make it by Christmas. It's 7 stories or 9-story building, and we've hired Piazza and Associates to work on the affordable housing piece, and I haven't heard anything from them. So I hope Mr. Broughton has something to tell us about that.
So I have spoken with Mr. Piazza actually a couple minutes after we got off the phone. He is working with the developer. He's identified the off-site units that will be included in the affordable housing component. He's waiting for the township, for myself to review the affordable housing agreement that we made with the developer, so that we can make sure that we're in proper compliance. I'm going to be meeting with the attorney to look at that agreement. And then shortly after that, he will start advertising the units. There's a period, I believe approximately 120 days of advertising. And then he'll hold his lottery, and the persons will be selected to occupy the units. So I'll have a report at the next meeting, probably with some more definite information once I meet with the attorney.
Guys, I just been informed by Deputy Mayor Katz that he has a function that, congratulations, his nephew has married and he has a Sheverbrucker to go to. So if you don't mind, one of the things he'd just like to see through is the public hearing and adoption of ordinances. So I'd like to make a motion to go out of order and do the public hearing and adoption of ordinances, and then go back to the council listed items. I have a motion and a second. We just do a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. Okay, so we're going to move to public hearing and adoption of ordinances. Ordinance number 242017, 252017, 262017, and 272017. The public hearing portion is now open. Do you have to read it?
Yes.
All right, go read it, please.
Ordinance number 24-2017, an ordinance amending sections 36-11.3 to 36:11-6 relating to restricted resident decal permit parking and restricted commuter decal parking of Article 2, Parking Division 1, generally in Chapter 36 of the Township Code entitled Traffic. Ordinance number 25-2017, an ordinance amending Section 33-28, Article 5 of Chapter 33 of the Code of the Township of Teaneck, restricting driveway width within the RS Residential Single Family Detached District. Ordinance number 26-2017, an ordinance amending Section 33-24, Article 5 of Chapter 33 of the Code of the Township of Teaneck, respecting side yard paving within the RS Residential Single Family Detached District. And ordinance 27-2017, an ordinance amending Section 33-24 of Article 5 of Chapter 33 of the Code of the Township of Teaneck, respecting accessory temporary tents within the RS Residential Single Family Detached District.
The hearing is now open. Would any members of the public like to comment on the ordinance that were just read? Come on up, sir. Howard Rose.
Howard Rose, a resident, the unacknowledged Board of Education representative, and planning board member. I'm speaking only as a resident at this point in time. Regarding ordinance 25-2017 and 26-2017. Every time I hear about coverage and pavement, my presumption is it's more coverage and more pavement. And I'm just wondering what the impact is, or can it be explained, please, to the public, regarding non-permeable coverage on all these land sites. I walk around Teaneck and drive around Teaneck, and I see more and more houses where there's a huge driveway that can encompass many cars, and it extends beyond the house towards the backyard, and it's all pavement. And now we want to make pavement wider for the parking. And then a side yard pavement, used to be grass, used to be permeable. What's the impact? Explain that to the public, please. Oh, you know I'm not stopping there. I want to thank the council for mentioning people recently deceased who have been very active community members.
Please, that's not good. That's good and well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's
These
good and well.
ordinances,
Okay,
please.
I'm done with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no other hands, hearing is now closed. William, do you have anything to add about the permeable surfaces?
I really don't have anything to add. I would defer to the attorney if he has anything to add legally.
Legally, it's completely acceptable. I would defer to the engineer for an
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's going around in circles on this. I mean, we're just making a minimal change on the lot coverage. You know, I think that if you look at...
More has to do with what's existing, and more has to do with bringing, I'm sorry, and more has to do with and I gave him my report on this originally, but it was a couple weeks ago, with existing, like, for example, the one with the parking lot, the one with the driveway, you could have a 3-car garage, you just can't get into your 3-car garage because you can only have a certain size curb cut or something like that. Or the one with the garage being separate. There's rules about parking on the side of your house if your garage is a certain location. So the two that you just specifically mentioned came out of the recommendations from our zoning officer.
And these were because these are typical things that are coming before a zoning board of adjustment that the zoning board of adjustment is granting based on the arguments. So we're not going to like 80% lot coverage or anything crazy like that. It's just a minimal change. Okay.
I just want to voice a concern about that. In your language, you said that these things are typically approved by the zoning board of adjustment, and I think that there's this mechanism in place to go before the zoning board of adjustment if your plan, is a variation of what is already established. And I don't think it's a bad thing to request that a resident or require a resident to come and present their variation to the zoning board of adjustment, because I think if we pass it and we make it, carte blanche for everybody to just do it, then we might find ourselves in situations where people are taking advantage of this small or minimal change that we're making to our, the aesthetic of our town. It's not creating a hardship for someone to come to the zoning board of adjustment and ask for an adjustment.
Well,
I
Can I
think
just
that-
add something?
No. I just want to say that, we have a very busy board of adjustment, and the zoning officer is the one who is bringing this up, and as well as the board has signed off on this, saying that, hey, look, it's something that we want to clean up the docket, so that, when people come in for, very complex house, and this is something by right that, they don't have a problem with. So, we don't want to see it. We change the status so that they can do it by right. So the whole purpose is if everybody's getting it and nobody has there's no opposition.
We did something similar like with the generators. At one point, the generators were case by case with the Board of Adjustment. And then, after the last superstorm, or two superstorms ago, maybe it was, they said, this is ridiculous. Every single person's coming in for a generator, and we're not saying no to anybody, so why are we making everyone go through the expense and the time and the money, so that's when they recommended the generator change, and that's when we did the generator change.
I'll close on this note. One of the things that we have on the consent agenda tonight is a resolution that's allowing steps, right, that are connected to someone's home that are actually impeding upon township land, and we're going through the steps of passing an ordinance, or a resolution to allow for that to happen. We could very easily just make a change and let everyone create steps that are impeding on township land because we see the need. But in this particular instance, we recognize that.
I think you're comparing apples to oranges.
No, that's a good point that you mentioned. The steps is a good, if I may answer, Mr. Mayor, the steps is a good point that you mentioned. The reason that we have to go through these motions with the steps, and I had nothing to do with this one or the zoning subcommittee, didn't come to us, but it's been very routine, is that because it's in the quote-unquote public right-of-way or the township portion of the public right-of-way, and I've seen this over the years, we need certain insurances as well.
Absolutely.
So I would be in favor of giving them a blanket license so anyone can do it, as long as we have I'm being sincere, as long as we have the insurance, because we want to protect the town so that if someone does trip on those steps, the township is protected. So we have like this irrevocable license for those steps.
And just to piggyback, you mentioned the cost of doing this. There's the cost to the resident of now hiring a lawyer, going through the variance, clogging up downstairs, going through everything. When the planning board, when the Board of Adjustment, when the zoning officer wanted to push this through, it's very similar to uniformity. The uniformity issue is on the books for years, and we were bringing all these residents or landlord or store owners, or sometimes both, in before us, clogging up their own agenda, spending their money, and it's actually probably about $800, $900 to get this variance, and that's why we're not just giving we're not just saying, hey, just do whatever you want, but this is something that it's years and years of being worn down until the board finally gives into the zoning officer and agrees with him. So this is not just hey, 5 people came up last month, let's make it go away. This has been something we've been hearing about for years.
Okay, if somebody like to move ordinance number. Go ahead, Alan.
Very quickly, I more than understand Howard Rose's concern about over compensating and having too much impermeable coverage. There's no doubt that that's one of the factors that aggravated some of the issues in Houston. I do think that we should be concerned, that we are looking at that, but I think that these are reasonable accommodations that address a very, very common concern that is largely rubber stamped through, but that creates a lot of stress and aggravation for homeowners who are now sitting there uncertain whether they'll be able to get this through. And I support these.
And then let's just, when you brought up Houston, just remember we're built on a hill.
We have that advantage.
Yeah, we're built on a hill.
There are people. There are people in low-lying areas.
Yeah.
Let's
I mean,
not forget
by
that.
two rivers. And,
Yes.
when those flood, they're going to flood. So, I mean, I don't think that this has anything to do with that. And it's I don't want to mix it's just a thing of.
No, that is the reason. Why are we preventing people from having 100% impermeable coverage? Because we want to be able to have water be able to get through and not overwhelm our storm sewers, not overwhelm our streets. So there is a reason for that, but I think there is a logical reason for these accommodations that address that without creating added problems and added burden to other residents.
Okay. Go ahead.
Are you in favor or not?
I have a question with Ordinance 272017. Is that a similar argument in the sense that we're trying to remove a backlog of requests with this ordinance?
So, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this was the tent ordinance where someone would have a function, and in the past they'd have to go through the whole process, and it was a process. This, I think, mirrors the state's permission, right? The state's laws.
Well, there was no provision. There's no provision in our code for putting tents in the front yard at all.
Right.
So the zoning officers would go look at it. We have no provision. Then it will come to me, requesting that they be allowed some, temporary permit or temporary exemption, usually for a few days. And usually because the side yard or the rear yard couldn't accommodate a tent, so we would allow it. But this is just formalizing that process, so
And
people
I think
are
they're
able
only allowed to do it for, I think, 7 days.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, so in formalizing this process, someone says, I want to put a tent in my front yard because we're having a special ceremony.
Yeah.
They come and they get a permit. That permit is valid for 7 days. And then after that 7 days, if it goes to the 8th, then we have the ability, some degree of enforcement, where we go and knock on their door and say, hey, you got to get this down. Okay.
And of course, the biggest enforcement is the fact that you have to rent it. So the longer you violate it, you're costing you a lot of money.
Yeah.
All right. Somebody like to move the ordinances?
Mayor, just one last question. On Ordinance 24, 2017, I kind of feel like we just keep piecemealing this. I mean, this is just another round of residential decal parking permits.
I thought we eliminated a lot of permits. Well, then we have a report that there's.
No, this isn't the handicap stuff.
Yeah. This is just.
This is 2417.
Right, it's Sherman Avenue. Okay, I thought you were saying.
No, this isn't Sherman Avenue. 2017. This is the area by the high school where we already have the decal parking. We open this up. We're opening this up to non-residents. That's what we're doing.
Does this also include Puffin and Ward?
Yes.
Okay.
Because when we restricted it just to residents,
Yeah. Right.
Ward Plaza, we have 44 spaces
Just,
and 4 people parking
All the
there.
ordinances from 24.
And that's been for at least 2 or 3 years. So we want to open that up now so that we can have others park there and maybe get some people off of the side streets.
I think we've discussed enough. Can we move all 4 ordinances?
Second.
A
Get
motion?
a second?
Yes. Deputy Mayor Katz seconded. Roll call, please.
Yes on all, with the exception of the paving of the side yards.
Which is ordinance, I believe, 2025. Councilman Rice?
Yes, oh no.
Councilman Schwartz?
Yes.
Councilman Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Pruitt?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Katz?
Yes.
Mayor Neely?
Yes.
Ordinances are duly adopted.
All right, going back to, have a good night. Congratulations. Back to council listed items. Council listed item number 7, incorrect wording of resolution 160-12017. Alan, did you put that on there or no? Who put that on there?
Yeah, Councilman Schwartz pointed out that there are a couple of names of mine, a couple of my name missing. There was a resolution that was put forward to preserve the Greenbelt, and there were two amendments that were made. One by Councilman Schwartz to remove references to Block 6002, Lot 10, the proposed site of a billboard, and another by Dr. Pruitt. Dr. Pruitt's amendment specifically said, I would like to amend to allow the Department of Transportation to minimally use whatever property needed to make a third lane going eastbound on Route 4 from Bell Avenue to Webster. This amendment was seconded by me immediately after being introduced. There was some back and forth about this resolution and some amendments that were made to it, and I think it's most instructive just to look at the last be it further resolved in this resolution as it appears online, which says that the entire Route 4 Greenbelt should be added to our recreation and open space inventory, RASI, with the exception of such property as may be required to widen State Highway Route 4 to 3 lanes in each direction along its entire length, lying within the township of Teaneck, and with the exception of Lot 10 in Block 6002. This isn't the amendment that was made.
All right. So
the other question, and the giant question here, is that we are taking a lot which has been dedicated as parkland, which is deed restricted, and saying that we will not be placing this on the RASI, on the Recreation and Open Space Inventory. And I think this amendment opens ourselves up to trouble.
Nobody's going to build anything there. They can't build anything there. But let me ask you, getting back to the second part of it, is who is responsible? Issa, did you put the resolution together, or did Bill Rupp put it together?
No, I was provided the resolution from the attorney, Mr. Rupp. I reviewed the tape today. I sent my comments back to Councilman Sohn, and that's pretty much it. But I didn't originate the resolution.
John, did you get a chance to look at this?
I haven't had a chance to view the video again, but I know that Issa, and I spoke to Issa today, he reviewed the tape, and Mr. Rupp reviewed the video himself.
Okay, so can we get you guys to review everything and figure out what's going on, and then have this corrected by the next meeting?
I hope that we can all sit down together. I mean, I have some genuine concerns about some of the other wording, but I think that's the most particular. But is that we have to be careful that we are, recording our RASI appropriately and listing all of those properties, and we could be subject to penalties from Green Acres for not doing so. And I certainly will be more than happy to sit down.
That's the issue, though. The issue, as I understand it, though, is not whether it's on RASI, and that's a legitimate issue, Councilman Sohn. The issue was whether or not the resolution was worded as appropriately per the amendments that were made in the July meeting. And my recollection was there was more than one amendment. There were two amendments in my notes.
There were two amendments, and I think, and again, I spoke about this in detail with the clerk. I think that one of the things that we do is by being rather loose and informal with the manner in which amendments and motions are made, that there was that ambiguity where it was unclear how this resolution.
There's two things going on, Alan. There's one, the fixing the resolution of what happened that night, and then there's a whole new resolution that it sounds like you want to put forward to correct language. So whatever it is, just put together a memo of what you want to do regarding that night. And then whatever changes you want or amend the amendment, please bring those forward. Same night, on the 19th.
We will see how we move forward, but I certainly will speak in detail with Mr. Sherdanian, who I hope does have an opportunity to view this video.
Okay. Councilman Sohn, pedestrian and traffic safety measures.
We received some wonderful news from the county. Dennis Rosastwinsky is here this evening, and he has been a persistent advocate for some of the changes to pedestrian safety at the crossing at Phelps Park and FDU. That was the site this past November of a tragic incident where someone was killed. There are changes that are being made in restriping and improving lighting, in putting flashing signs, in considering the reuse of reflective flashing blocks, RFBBs. But this is far from the only crossing that is an issue. Look at crossings on Cedar Lane, look at crossings on Teaneck Road, look at crossings on Queen Anne Road and throughout the township, many of which are on county roads that need and would benefit And my suggestion from improvements to pedestrian safety, some of the elements that I think also are remarkably productive are education components, not only for pedestrians, for drivers, for those, again, at FDU it's students, at other locations it's seniors, at other locations it's elementary and high school students. And my suggestion is that we ask the manager to come up and develop a comprehensive strategy for making changes and improvements to all of our pedestrian crossings across the township, using the experience we have and some of the things that Mr. Rosas-Twinsky has helped push forward as a model for other pedestrian crossings throughout the township.
I think that there are many of our pedestrian crossings that do need improvement, but I think the more appropriate way to do it is to hire a traffic expert. We should hire an expert to develop a plan, a strategy for the township that can be appropriately implemented. I don't think that that's something the staff should be tasked with doing. Each of these intersections need to be analyzed so that they have the appropriate marking, the appropriate traffic control device, and it should be done by an engineer. It should be done by a traffic expert.
Can I make a motion that we ask the manager to get some quotes or proposals for our next meeting agenda so that we can have this and move this forward?
Yeah, great. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Perfect. Okay. Status of website emergency notification system.
So we spoke about this at the last meeting. I had thought that we would start seeing the website sooner. As it turns out, there were some notifications regarding the use of the emergency notification system, and there were a lot of questions. What was that sound that I was hearing? I think a lot of people had no idea what was coming. And to make sure that people know that this exists so that they are listening out for it, but also to make sure that we find out what the status is and when we can expect the new website to be fully implemented.
The website or the emergency
Both
alert
the
system?
website and the emergency alert.
The website. So the website we'll be bringing up the new website shortly. As Ron said, who works in our IT department, I'll have a discussion with Vince tomorrow, but we didn't want to bring it up. We didn't want to launch it, today or right after the holiday. We're waiting for the appropriate time to launch it. Our emergency alert system, our townwide emergency alert system, is almost fully installed. Sirens are up. It's being tested now. It's being calibrated. And hopefully we should be able to go live with it very shortly.
And can we have Jane Irwin make the inaugural announcement? Going to just thank her again, and thank all those other residents who pushed us forward. Again, I think this can be a component of notifying residents in case of emergency. In terms of number 10, which is also my own, is one of the aspects, and I hope that we can work with the attorney and really start not only completing the Rossi and seeing if there are any additional properties, but also start crafting that Greenbelt ordinance. One of the comments that was made by Councilman Schwartz, by Deputy Mayor Katz, is that it's not enough to pass a resolution. We need to have these ordinances to implement this, and I hope that we can move forward. I also hope that we can, we did establish a subcommittee, and I know there are challenges over the summer in meeting, but I hope that that all three of us, Dr. Pruitt and Councilwoman Romney Rice, can have an opportunity to meet, to go over that and work with the attorney in crafting that, crafting the needed ordinances and the needed additions to the recreation open space inventory.
I think we're all in favor of number 11.
Yeah,
So
if I will work, I will submit to the attorney before the 19th a resolution to support that. I think it's.
I think they have a pro forma one that they're.
You know, it's funny, I've asked for a pro forma, and I couldn't find it, and then I think we do want to make this, there are elements that really are specific to Teaneck. You know, a lot of people think that this, and you know, if you've seen in the record, there's a lot of discussion where the assumption is that we'd be told exactly when and what's coming through. The main elements of S806 is sort of, you know, overall pictures of what kinds of things are coming through, and assistance to our emergency services providers to develop plans for evacuation, for recuperation from an incident, and I think those are all critical for us. I will work with the attorney on that. I do want to, in terms of number 12, in terms of signups for email and Nixle, the notification, you know, this is, Howard Rose has made suggestions that when we send out our tax bills, that there be an announcement, a notification asking people to sign up. When the third quarter, final third quarter, fourth quarter, preliminary first, second quarter bills were sent out, there was a one-page notification that would be impossible for any resident to miss unless you didn't open up that page or didn't open up the open up the envelope and assumed it was some sort of spam from the Township of Teaneck. But I think it is critical that we do get people signed up on Nixle, signed up on the email list, and just to ask the manager to see if there has been positive feedback on those changes.
I can't tell you that we observed a spike in the number of signups, but we do have approximately 4,800 people signed up on the website, so that number has been improving.
Yeah, it's gone up 1,800 in 4 years.
Yeah, I was going to say it was 3,000,
Yeah,
but I think
yeah.
that's...
Okay.
And again, there are, you know, we did get a set of financial reports. There are some aspects, and one of the main things that we've been expecting and built into our 2017 budget was, as expected revenue, was revenue from building permits. And a big chunk of that looks like it's going to come in below expectations. And to start thinking about those ways and those changes that we can make, not just for next year, and we've already started thinking about some 2018 changes, but to start thinking about those changes where we can start tightening our belts, maybe pushing off some of the construction proposals, whether perhaps even considering reducing some of the size of projects, and start tightening our belts now while we have a chance to do it, and to impact the 2017 budget, and to put us in a better state for 2018 as we start moving ahead.
Thank you. Mark?
It was brought to my attention that FDU is celebrating their 75th anniversary, I believe, coming up. And I think that's something we should be presented to them.
Yep.
A proclamation or something like that. Then maybe it's
Absolutely.
Mr. Langford or whoever else, you know, to come in.
Great. Okay, next item on tonight's agenda is good and welfare. This is where anybody can speak on any topic. Mr. Vatsky?
Art Vatsky, Teaneck. I've been thinking about the situation with the overpayments to our employees, that there's been no plan given to get hold of those funds, which were overly expended and were expended improperly, and they're the town taxpayer money. We certainly don't want to injure the employees who received the funds, because they received it according to the paperwork they got. So I want to propose this, and I'd like to hear your comments on it after Good and Welfare closes, which is the employees that are working toward retirement, that when their retirement begins, that the monies they were paid in 15 and 16 and 17 be considered part of their retirement money that they just happen to receive early. So everything works out. If they're $15,000 a year pension, and they've already got $5,000 a year that they should not have gotten, then I think the council and the manager, it would be contingent upon you to take care of this money. Of course, I don't want to pay for mistaken money. I don't think we should allow that to happen. If I remember, it was $1 or $2 million that was dispersed this way, and I think it's fine if people get to consider their retirement coming in early, which is still retirement money. We need to get that money back. You look, if you don't get it back, you look sloppy, you know? No, we put out too much money. Turns out it's a mistake. You can keep it. It's okay. No, that's not how business works. That's not how government works. And I'd like to see Teaneck correct this situation, and I'd like to see what you've been doing for it. Thank you.
Ms. Irwin?
Jane Irwin, Teaneck. The Senior Citizen Advisory Board urges that you dedicate a room at the Senior Center to honor the memory of Lou Schwartz. He was instrumental in the development of the Teaneck Senior Center at the Rhoda Center and was a valued member of the Senior Citizens Advisory Board. Thank you for your support of issues of importance to this Teaneck senior community. The purchase and installation of the Audible alarm system is an example of such cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Loft?
Sandy Loft, Teaneck. I'd like to thank the council for their responsiveness to the letter that we sent. I was going to read the letter in its entirety, but I'll just read a part of it about Lou Schwartz. You are well aware of the many titles and years of service that he has given to the town, and we shall not list them. We would like, however, to draw attention in particular to his hands-on role in developing, implementing, and sustaining a viable community for Teaneck's older senior residents. I wasn't planning on talking about this tonight, but since you passed this resolution, which I commend you for, on the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and talking about the diversity of our community. We are all so proud of that. But we shouldn't sit on our laurels because we aren't perfect. And there are areas where improvement is always a good idea. One of them is in housing and in neighborhoods. And neighborhoods in Teaneck, although more integrated now than they were 40, 50 years ago, are still pretty homogeneous. My concern is with this new construction that's going on and with this affordable housing monitor that Dr. Pruitt has addressed. I haven't seen any advertising for this housing. I haven't seen any reaching out to the entire community for applications for rentals of these properties. I'm also a little upset that the affordable housing part is not included in the housing element, but is in separate areas. I know that by law you can pay for affordable housing in another location, but I would like to see it incorporated in the housing. And I would like the council to address, since we seem to be so involved with development and redevelopment, that we give priority to having the advantage of applying for apartments, either rentals or purchases, to be open to all, and that be a concerted effort. And then I think we can really be proud of our community, that we're always going forward and improving on what is already pretty terrific. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hirschfelder?
Dennis Hirschfelder, Teaneck. Thank you, council members, for taking a look at or for considering the resolution against the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act that's now before Congress. And Councilman Schwartz, I would be more than happy to sit down with you and answer any questions you have on this. I did receive a communication today from Senator Weinberg, who's in California, that she asked me to share with you tonight, and I will quote it. As a strong proponent and sponsor of New Jersey gun safety laws, I want to thank the Teaneck Council for putting forth this resolution and hopefully adding their voices on behalf of our citizens to this important issue, end quote. Again, thank you, and I will be glad to answer any questions at any time.
Thank you, and I wish I could have gone, I'll answer at the end.
Forgive it, no problem. Thank you very much.
Ma'am in the back.
Hi, Andrea Schumann, Teaneck, Sherman Avenue. We're eager to find out the results of the surveys, and we were thinking it was going to be in your report tonight. And assuming we had the majority want the restriction with the resident decals, hoping we can get this ordinance passed maybe at the September 19th meeting. And so I want your comment. Thank you.
Mr. Rose.
Howard Rose, Teaneck resident. Mention of the YAB was mentioned by Siobhan Rice, and I'm wondering what percentage of the YAB participants, Youth Advisory Board participants, are non-district residents. We have a substantial number of students in the township who do not attend the district school, and I hope that it's encouraged that we get non-district students to participate, and I know they have in the past. I'm just wondering if there's any feedback regarding what the ratio is now. The more inclusive it is of non-district residents, I think the better off it is for the group as a whole. Regarding Mr. Castle's having an attachment to the people who are picked up for problems with whether it's racism or hate crimes or whatever, and why can't, instead of reinventing the wheel and have Teaneck go an extra step, is there any way there can be linkage to the state? You know, this person did ABC, bang, throw it over to the state to prosecute or the county to prosecute for whatever infractions there may be. Again, we don't have to take that burden on directly, but we should certainly make sure that due process is served regarding the infringement on everyone's rights. Regarding Mr. Pruitt, I think you can take heart that there are a lot more people demonstrating than perhaps there are politicians orating regarding the problem. So I see progress, certainly not enough, but it's not a downward slope, it's an upward slope. We're climbing it slowly. I'm wondering regarding CSX whether it would be reasonable to make sure that we send documents about what we're thinking of doing to other townships along the rail line so they can take heed and perhaps add to the amount of visibility that's going on regarding track status, et cetera. We don't do this alone. We do it together. We have a better effect, I believe. I'm wondering regarding the housing. Now, I'm speaking as a member of the planning board, but certainly not representing them. I was very strong in the emphasis that we should increase the level of affordable housing ratio to apartments being built and whatnot. And I'm just wondering, is the cost of administering this and advertising this and making sure it's equitably done borne by the people developing the property, or is that a township expense? Regarding the safety system, I'm wondering what the hesitancy is on trying this stuff out as soon as possible, because if it's an audible system and you can talk on it, you know, the statement's always going to be made. I hope this is just a test, and maybe people, if they can hear it, they can understand it. If they can't hear it, it doesn't matter what we say or do, and it's not a problem.
Thank you, Mr.
I hope,
Rose.
again, we go forward with this as expeditiously as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Rose.
Thank you all for your work.
Thank you. Dr. Powers.
Chuck Powers, Teaneck. It's actually been a pleasure to watch this council tonight. Most of the things that you folks have been doing are extraordinarily important things for the town and for the country. I continue to be very concerned about the ability of this town to actually track what it has done in the past, to understand its implications for the future. I'm going to pass out to you a copy of a map that shows what the township in 1966, through its clerk, told the state were all its parklands. And you'll find on here that block 6002, lot 10, is actually already a parkland. And the township so proclaimed it to the state when they were seeking money to get lot 27 paid for when they wanted to acquire it. And I also want to pass out to you a second document that actually is several pages from what it was that the township signed in 2011. People who signed it were Mr. Rupp and our manager. And what it says are what it is that what the penalties are if we don't actually carry out a ROSI that's consistent with what the state requires, reconciled. And it makes it very clear that should lands held by the local government for recreation or conservation purposes be by mistake or inadvertence omitted, such lands shall be subject to the terms and conditions and declarations of the same to the same extent as though they have been included. Those are things that this township agreed to. What we're finding is the town has agreed to a whole range of things in relationship to open space that we somehow have forgotten and have been told actually by our attorneys that they don't exist. We're finding pretty consistently that we have told the state many of these things that we are obligated to by virtue of either the state having made commitments to the town to support financially, or the town has accepted deeds, or the town has sent forth in ordinances. There are actually in this ordinance 1279 57 properties along the greenbelt that the township, by ordinance, said were parklands. Why it is that we're still struggling with these issues, pretending as if that history is not there, I do not understand. And I do not understand at all why it was that there was still another change made on the resolution, inconsistent with what this council passed, to the Sohn resolution, inconsistent with that, and made this afternoon at 3 o'clock. I do not understand how 2 months later you're still not there on that resolution. Thank you very much.
Sir.
My name is Denis Rozestwiński. First of all, I would like to thank the Township of Teaneck and the Teaneck Police for all to-date efforts regarding making River Road safer for pedestrians. On November 21st, 2016, Wei Jiwang, a student of Dickinson University, was fatally hit while legally crossing River Road. A petition has been filed right after the tragedy. 1,500 signatures were collected to voice the concerns of FDU students, staff, and Teaneck town people, and to request traffic safety improvements on River Road. We are now 10 months later. On August 19 of this year, the Bergen Record reported that the township plans to install signs with flashing yellow lights on either sides of the crosswalk near the library circle. A push button will activate the light to indicate that pedestrians is crossing. Bergen County will paint stripped area in the middle of the crossing to push cars to each side of the pedestrian walk and create a refuge in the center. I would like to caution against this refuge strip in the middle of the crossing. A painted area does not provide sufficient or any physical protection to the pedestrians trapped in the middle. My original my originally presented traffic crossing proposal mentioned a narrowing of the road, however, to the middle to slow down the traffic, as you recall. By narrowing the lanes to the sides, it encourages, actually the opposite, encourages the drivers not to stop to the pedestrian and puts pedestrians in the unnecessary danger, again in the middle of the pedestrian walk. An island with railing and high curb would be the only acceptable safe solution. Therefore, it would be safer not to create a painted island at all. And I would like also to ask about the dates by when any changes will be seen on River Road, as well as would like to again emphasize to caution against this island. Thank you again for all your efforts, and let's make the improvements on the River Road as most effective to save lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just by a show of hands, who else would like to speak? Okay.
Marie Warnke. I'm here as chair of the Preserve the Greenbelt Committee. Obviously, we are asking you to preserve the entire section of the Greenbelt that's public land through registering it with Rossi and then having it declared historic. We also have recommended in the past that you purchase the Siegel building and put it as parkland. And just as a background for some of you who weren't here in the 90s when the Preserve the Greenbelt Committee began, the founder of this group was Carl Greedy, and he showed from the very beginning that it was always possible to widen Route 4 to 3 lanes in both directions by using an 11-foot width of the lanes. What the committee opposed was that the state said in widening the Greenbelt they wanted 12-foot lanes and shoulders on both sides. To do it the state way would include taking people's homes along the Greenbelt. When the committee, the township, and DOT worked probably about 15 years ago on the restructuring of the bridge, which is still in progress, we all agreed on a way to do it that was feasible in preserving the Greenbelt and providing widening. And some of that was taking some of the Greenbelt to make it safe. And there's your opportunity to be able to fund the purchasing of the Siegel building, because when DOT said they would take open space land, they would replace it with open space land in Teaneck. So you could use the money that DOT would be giving us to purchase the Siegel building and therefore have the Greenbelt preserved forever. And we don't have to have this constant vigilance and then conflict back and forth about the Greenbelt, because it is a real treasure to Teaneck. Thank you.
Thank you. In the back, ma'am.
Natalie Addison of Teaneck. I come as a member of the Senior Advisory Board, and I just want to commend the council and the town management on considering naming a room at the senior center in honor of Lou Schwartz, because he was a nice person who really was dedicating and doing community work for the township of Teaneck. So I really appreciate that. And as for the audible alarm system, I'm so glad to see that it's actually being put in place. I have sat at meetings with the town manager and other people involved in the community. So I'm so happy about that, and I just want to thank you for doing your part, and it's really appreciated. So it's something good, and I'm sure it will benefit all the residents of Teaneck. So I thank you again.
Thank you. Mr. Veach?
Thank you. James Veach, Teaneck resident. readers of the Suburbanite and the Record know that Teaneck recently sued a resident, Mr. Jones, for his exercising what the township thought were too many rights under the Open Public Record Act. Teaneck decided not only to sue Mr. Jones, but to seek an injunction against him. The lawsuit didn't end well, and Teaneck now has to pay Mr. Jones's lawyer more than $19,000. Now, this sorry episode, and this is not the first time that Teaneck has lost these Oprah litigation fights and had to pay real money, prompts a suggestion and a request. Here's my suggestion. Stop whining about obligations under the Open Public Records Act. FDU has about 13,000 students, and about 5,000 or 6,000 of them are here on the Hackensack Teaneck campus. I think you could find a handful of these students who would be delighted to come here and help Mr. Abbasi or anybody else sort through records and comply with these acts. In fact, I think the federal government would actually support and help pay for that project. Or we could use residents here in Teaneck who would be delighted to come down here and spend a couple of hours going through these records, making the copies, putting them in the envelopes, putting the records back into the files. I think it would be a teachable moment. It would show that Teaneck really is proud of its government and uses its residents to promote open government. Now, I have a request, and here's my request. I would like each member of this council to state on the record whether he or she voted in favor of this foolish lawsuit. Now, I know it's going to provoke agitation from Mr. Rupp and others who will say it's privileged, it's privileged. It's not privileged. If you don't take an appeal, this litigation is over. And I think the residents need to know who supports open public records and who doesn't, who is willing to try to intimidate residents and discourage requests, and who favors the Open Public Record Act. I think that we are entitled to know how you voted for this thing, and I think voters are entitled to take that into account next year or 3 years from now when you come up for re-election. Finally, the Suburbanite article said that Mr. Rupp would come to the council closed session tonight and address this stinging defeat, and I assume would address the issue of an appeal. Please tell me that you're not going to try to appeal this decision. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beach. Mr. Kaplan?
Keith Kaplan, Teaneck. First off, I want to thank you for finally getting rid of the uniformity ordinance. I've for years heard from businesses coming before Teaneck that say they had to take time, money, get sign makers, people, simply because they wanted a sign with blue lettering instead of the red lettering that was on a similar sign on their building. And Mr. Castle, if you had heard from some of the people that come to the Board of Adjustment that have to spend an equal amount of time and money, you would understand why a lot of the variances that are regularly granted should, in fact, be done away with in this mechanism. And for those that may not be as up to snuff on the code, in 40:55D-70.1, which I'm sure rolls off the tongue, it does mention that the Board of Adjustment is allowed to prepare a report for the Town Council and the Planning Board with regularly given variances, and it does flip the ability of applicants to get easy variances, and there already is a provision in the code. I want to thank you for the work you've done with FDU. Last year, my child's bus stop was on River Road, and this is a place that's extremely dangerous. I think there's a number of suggestions. The raised curb line, there's a lot of modular raised curbs that could work in the middle, and I hope those are being taken a look at. There A couple of years ago, this council passed a surveys ordinance, and there seems to be some miscommunication with the building department on what exactly is required. I would hope that for the benefit of residents, you would be able to perhaps put a refresher course. I know when things change and people have regularly done things a certain way for decades, it might not be so easy for them. I hope we can get some kind of refresher on what is required. The a resolution concerning hate. I had the opportunity for the last couple weeks to go to another town that's had some very hateful rhetoric going on. And I think Councilwoman Ramirez hit the nail on the head. It is the silence of your friends that is most deafening. And I hope that this council will be a breath of fresh air and a symbol to a lot of our elected leaders in what they can do to speak out about the hate and the contrary view to American values that seems to be happening in many parts of the country. If I have a second regarding the gun reciprocity ordinance, speak to it next time.
Yeah, speak to it. Thank you. I don't mean to stifle your free speech like that happened somewhere else, but sorry. Anyone else? Yassine in the back.
Good evening, Yassine Koryani, Teaneck. Well, as a friend, I'm not going to be silent tonight. I went on Google, did what Mr. Pruitt does best, which is search on the internet, and I wanted to search the definition of an Eruv. So I typed Eruv Teaneck, and then the first thing that came up was a Wikipedia listing. Then I went ahead and I adjusted it, and I typed Eruv Mawa Upper Saddle River, and then Google replied, "Did you mean kryptonite?" So, but that's not what I would like to speak about tonight. Another thing that happened last week was the Muslim community worldwide celebrated Eid al-Adha, which is the holiday that commemorates the sacrifice of Prophet Abraham. And in speaking of sacrifice, I would like to extend my gratitude and my thanks to you for serving the township. In addition, today as I was reading the news, I realized that Teaneck had an increase of 50% in the number in the substance abuse admissions. We were ranked 5th in 2015 in Bergen County. Now we're ranked 4th. We saw an increase of 50%. Now, just an FYI, and speaking of the Youth Advisory Board, and maybe this is an opportunity to answer Mr. Rose's question. The Youth Advisory Board has 4 young people, Devorah, Joy, Naji, and Soha. At least one of them is not from the school district, so that makes it at least 25% who are out of district. And they did a great job last year. They attempted to organize an event. They made an effort. I was there with them in the meetings, but it was kind of a disappointment to see that their event was canceled due to cancellations from the speakers themselves. I hope we're going to be able to provide the youth a better environment where they can flourish. And as an FYI, linking between the two things, I just came across the ordinance that I think created the Youth Advisory Board, and which pretty much mentions that the scope of the Youth Advisory Board is more than simply, and I would like to hand this to everybody, including the township attorney, that it includes more than simply bringing in suggestions to the township. It also supposed to have take care of even issues related to substance abuse. So that just an FYI, if you would like to comment on it, that would be very nice. But thank you very much for listening. Please keep up the great work. We're thankful for what you do for us. Thank you. Have a good night.
Anyone else? No? Seeing no other hands, good and welfare is now closed. Thank you for all the comments tonight. I just also, I neglected to mention that there will be a memorial service for the Honorable Lou Schwartz on September 10th. I believe that it starts at the, William, is it at the library or is it at the Rhoda Center? It's at the library. And at what time? 3 o'clock, September 10th? Sunday, September 10th at 3 o'clock. All right, since I don't remember which side we did last time and I wasn't here, I'm going to start with my left. Councilman Stone?
Naturally, I would be remiss if I did not recognize Lou Schwartz, and again, his contributions to the township from the time he was elected. One of the things that he advocated for was permanent preservation of the Greenbelt, I think, in the 1987 resolution. One of the things that we can do to perpetuate his memory is to see that implemented. I would also be remiss if I did not recognize Naomi Kramer, who would have stood up this evening to speak about some of these issues. Why are we not taking care of things? Why are we not attending to issues? I think that she always, in an environment where good government advocates are always looked down upon, she held the fire to us, and I think that was something that I always appreciated. I want to thank Ms. Loft, Ms. Addison, Ms. Irwin for their comments on behalf of the Senior Citizens Advisory Board and recognizing Mr. Schwartz. And also, again, I'm glad for the push that we needed, and that was something that Naomi also had pushed us, is to get the Audible alert system implemented. I looked up to Mr. El-Kayarni's point. As the second largest municipality in Bergen County, you would expect us to be ranked second in admissions. We are half as many admissions as Hackensack, and there are some much smaller municipalities, Englewood, Lodi, Elmwood Park, that are not that far behind us. I reached out to research some options on treatment options, on reaching out to other ways to see about the treatment and the opioid epidemic, and that's something that we should continue doing. Most importantly, I want to thank Marie Warnke for her remarks about the Greenbelt. I want to thank Dr. Powers. And again, I think the remarks you made that again, it is possible that in the past, our omission of 6002 Lot 10, the proposed site of the billboard, was an oversight. It was something that we might have left out inadvertently. But the wording that we have right now for 6002 Lot 10, saying that it will be excluded from the open space inventory, now puts us in a distinct error of commission. We are specifically excluding that property, given the way that ordinance that resolution is worded. And we need to be very, very careful, given the penalties that are possible and that can be imposed by the state of New Jersey in the Green Acres program, that we are implementing that properly. And I do hope to work with the attorney and to ensure that resolution is worded correctly, and that, as indicated by that map from 1966, which covers the properties designated as parkland in Ordinance 1279 passed in December of that year, that we have all appropriate properties included on the Greenbelt.
Mark?
I wanted to make one comment to what I firmly agree with, to Ms. Loft's comments about the affordable housing. The complex that was built, that's being built on Palisades, Queen Anne Road, 126 units, went before the Board of Adjustment, and there was 6 or 8 affordable housing units that were allowed to be off-site. Since then, that was done through a variance. All the projects that have been approved since 1500 Teaneck Road, Avalon Bay, require a 10% set aside, which we're now increasing. They require it to be on site. They also require it to be the same mix. There's no pour door. There's no, let's give them 15 studio units on the side. It went as far as that there's actually 3 bedrooms at 1500 Teaneck Road, whereas the rest of the complex, I don't believe, has any. So everything you said is spot on. There's a lot of debate with that in New York City as it relates to off-site and pour doors. We've taken into consideration, we've approved it. We're looking to increase upon it for all our future sites. In regards to Mr. Rose, to your comment about the consultant is being paid by the developer to make sure it's advertised, make sure it's monitored, make sure it's done appropriately. A lot of that was done, of course, so there's a arm's length transaction. There's full transparency on the matter. So I just wanted to clarify those questions that you both had, which were both very good questions, and I hope I've answered it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason?
Yes. So very quickly, for Mr. Vatsky, I want to bring, I agree with you that when we need to be able to recoup some of the monies that were spent as related to healthcare waivers. And I think the attorney can probably speak to this better than I can, but in 2014 there was a case where the Police Benevolence Association was sued by the Township of Irvington because the township overpaid the police officers, right? And the defense that was actually raised in that case by the Police Benevolence Association was something called the equitable doctrine of latches. And it basically said that when there was this inexcusable delay in asserting a right, that the police officers could basically say that because they were in a situation where it would have created an undue hardship to them for them to repay that money, the court found that they didn't have to repay the money because there was a delay in exercising that right. My fear is that we find ourselves in a situation where the township overpaid based on whatever. And what we do know from the audit is that some people wrote things down and, you know, we should have done a better job in not paying them. And what we also know is that when people were honest and they didn't do anything that was nefarious and we overpaid them, that basically the clock starts ticking for us, right, as to when we can go after them and pursue that. So I would very much be in favor of recouping money from individuals who may have deceived us through nefarious measures and they got an overpayment. But I think we made a mistake and we have to look forward. We did all that we could to, you know, ratchet down, you know, or close off the faucet, and we can do better. But I think at this particular juncture, unless we can identify the people who collected that money by deceiving us, that we just have to be much more prudent in spending our money moving forward. The second thing I want to mention, and it didn't come up today, but this is something that I've discussed at length today. Today, the administration announced the end of DACA. And for those of you who aren't aware, DACA is a deferred action for childhood arrivals. And what is so disheartening about this, and just so that you understand, DACA, it allows for certain non-documented immigrants who enter the country as minors to apply for a renewable 2-year deferred action from deportation. These are individuals who essentially had no choice in coming to America, but this is the only country that they know, and now we have an administration that has ended this program. The reason that this is important is because originally, I think it was Pew Research said that there were 1.4 million people who would likely be impacted by DACA. And roughly 800,000 of those individuals that were anticipated to be affected actually came forward and they identified themselves and they put their names into a system for 2-year renewal.
Jason, would you like to put forward a resolution for the next meeting?
I'm going to put something forward, but the reason I bring it up at this particular session, Mayor, is because we are a very diverse community and we don't know which of our residents, particularly the younger in generation, might be impacted by this. We don't know how it could impact our workforce in the township. We don't know how it could impact the workforce for our own employees. But
so I agree. I think that we all be in favor of bringing in the resolution for the next meeting.
If you could give me just the
Listen,
courtesy.
everybody else has the same amount of time.
Understood.
And it's every time that we go through this. And there's no reason on a night where we just have
Mayor,
everybody agreeing with somebody that you're just going to keep going on and on and on.
And I'm not exactly
so if you
sure
could just
why there has
finish
to be
your
animus about
statement,
something
and
that
we're
we
all
all
in
are
favor of a
agreement on.
resolution, if you could just finish your statement, as I explained to you before. My
I'd
job
like
is to
to.
run the meeting, so
I'd
just
like
finish
to.
your statement.
I'd very much like to. If you are not informed about it, I will bring forward a resolution at the next meeting. We are all entitled to our own opinions, particularly when they're informed opinions, but we're not entitled to our own set of facts. So I'd like to get the facts out there, and I'd like the support of this council unanimously in having a resolution very similar to this one that we passed and that you raised this evening in support of
Yeah, I'm going to
immigrants.
support it. I'll tell you that. Now I just want to move on.
I understand. And when the issue is yours, you have no problem with us talking ad nauseum about it. What I'm simply suggesting and asking respectfully is to have the same level of respect and support for a resolution at the next meeting that we unanimously gave to yours.
I'll support that.
This evening.
I'll support
Great.
it.
Thank you. Councilman Rice?
The tone of the meeting was quite nice. And I want to thank all the residents for their kind statements and commendment of working together, because while we always can agree to disagree, I think that ultimately we are looking for the best interest of the township. For instance, I want to thank Mr. Powers for the issue of the Green Acres, and I think the reason why we have yet to come to a final resolution is because we are very concerned about getting the wording correct. I don't think anyone is trying to circumvent the issues at this point, but I appreciate my colleague, Mr. Sohn, continuing to push forth, and for the councils taking the time to make sure that the wording is indeed correct to protect the Greenbelt. I just also wanted to acknowledge some of our champions in our community, Mr. Lou Schwartz, Naomi Kramer, Abe Martin, whose service was just this evening, who served 23 years as a police officer here in Teaneck, and Ms. Winifred Farrar, who also championed a number of civil rights issues here in our community. And it's those people and people like yourselves who are here in the best interest of our community. So while we sometimes don't always agree, I like to think that we agree that we're looking to make this township a better place. Better place where diversity continues. And Ms. Loff mentioned the question about the housing, and I don't think the concern was just about the affordable housing, but just in terms of the advertising of various complexes to ensure that they're advertised in such a way that would continue to foster the diversity in our community. And I don't know if we quite addressed that concern about the advertisement of how we're drawing people to our diverse community to maintain that beautiful diversity that we enjoy. Mr. Hirschfeld left, but I wanted to appreciate his comments about gun safety and wholeheartedly support that domestic terroristic issue that we faced. Sherman Avenue, I know that our resident has been very patient, and hopefully we will be addressing that issue. Howard, your concern about the youth advisory, I appreciate having Mr. Yassin on the advisory board and your forward of this information about the ordinance. I think that we're working very hard to make sure that the YAP is inclusive. We also have on that board two members of the Board of Education. One, Sarah Rappaport, who is very interested in making sure that it is open to all community members, as her children actually are part of that, and wants to make sure that we reach out to various private institutes in our community so that those students are included in addition to our public school students. Our student from FDU, I want to applaud your persistence in making sure in the memory of your classmate that River Road is indeed safe for all residents, and I know that we did have some traffic experts out there hoping to provide the best solution, but I appreciate your persistence on making that happen. That's my buzzer, so thank you.
Thank you. William, if you could address Sherman Avenue as well as River Road.
Yes, Sherman Avenue. Sherman Avenue, we sent out approximately 23 surveys, received 14, so that'll allow us to move forward with an ordinance. And the 14 were in favor of implementing that no person shall park a vehicle on Sherman Avenue between Albin Street and Mildred Street between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m., except Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays, without displaying a resident decal. So the timeline would be September 19th. We'll have the ordinance introduced. The engineer will have to go out, take some measurements, and prepare the ordinance. October 17th, that's the next council meeting. The ordinance will be up for adoption. We'll have a hearing for adoption. And then 20 days after it's published in the newspaper, it can go into effect. So that's about November 10th. We expect that. Signs will be posted. It should go into effect around November 10th. And the next one was what? I'm sorry.
River Road.
River Road. We've been working with the county on a striping plan for that location. Our township engineer has been in constant contact. This is what the engineers recommend that we do, this striping plan, but I will bring the results or the information relayed in this meeting to the engineers to see what they recommend. I believe that they preferred the idea of striping. We've done the same thing on Cedar Lane. If you look at Cedar Lane between Grange Road by CVS, we also have that type of striping where we have that area in the middle of the road. I think it's very effective, and it definitely helps pedestrians to be able to cross the road. I think it also slows the vehicles as well.
Thank you. Mr. Veach left, but you did bring up some points about the litigation that we had. I'd like to have our township attorney address the statements that were made by Mr. Veach.
Well, some of the statements would require me to violate or vitiate the attorney-client privilege, which I'm not going to do, Mr. Mayor, as you know. But certainly, I was present in court during the oral argument on the request for the attorney's fees by Mr. Jones's counsel, and I can tell you that something that the court said, and I have got a copy of the transcript because I wanted to quote this because I knew this was going to come up at some point, which was that the quote from the court was, "I don't think it was frivolous," meaning the lawsuit was not frivolous. I mean, at best, and then I was talking about Mr. Jones's use of Oprah. At best, it was abusive. I can't go to the mental state on this record, but it certainly had the effect of overwhelming the town, inundating the town, substantially disrupting the operation of the town, but Oprah has a remedy for that. So,
can you talk to the remedy of how much that specific Oprah request would have cost, or similar Oprah request would have costed in that situation?
Well, one of the things that Oprah permits is what they call a special services charge or special services fee when you receive a request that will substantially disrupt the operations of the municipality. And I mean, there was a 400 Oprah requests in 30 days, or Issa, you can give me the exact number, I'm sure.
380.
380 in approximately 30 days, so it was more than 10 requests per day, 12 requests, 13 requests per day. And when you look at what the work of the clerk's office is supposed to be, Oprah is not intended, while it's intended to permit citizens to have access to government records, it's not permitted to allow citizens to shut down the government by making requests for those records. So there are mechanisms that that are used to utilize that, to deal with that kind of abuse. However, the judge also did say during his opinion that there is no handbook on this. These laws new, and the exploration of it and the case law on it is fairly new. So there is no book that any lawyer can go to or any government official can go to and say, okay, this is the Oprah handbook and this tells me what to do. There are cases that are coming out and are explaining this as recently as a week ago when the Supreme Court of New Jersey came out with its latest Oprah decision, or 2 weeks ago, which said that you can do exactly what Teaneck did in this case, which is file an affirmative claim as the municipality, as opposed to the requester filing a claim. So this is a newly explored area. The judge made his ruling in this case. There was certainly, from my opinion and my analysis, and again, I'm new to this in the sense that I wasn't the township attorney. I'm observing this with fresh eyes. There was no attempt to penalize any person. There was no attempt to stifle free speech or the free access of records. What this was simply an attempt to preserve the operations of the government of Teaneck, which are being crushed by an avalanche of requests that no public entity, I don't care how large it was, could deal with in the time period that's required by the statute.
Thank you. I just want to add, I hope the press is here, and I know they've been, covering the story. I hope they, talk about the person who filed the request and how many different lawsuits he has against the town. There's multiple lawsuits that are going on with said individual. That's public record. Ms. Loft, I just wanted to, sorry to call you up, but I just wanted to address what you were talking about, because I gave some thought about, the integration of neighborhoods and how far we've come. I think a lot of it is like, I wouldn't live in Allen's neighborhood, not because of there are not nice houses there, but I just feel like for the taxes I don't get what I'm paying for sometimes. So sometimes I think it's a question of economics, because I know a lot of people from high school who've integrated into the Northwest, but I think that a lot of us kind of just don't find it the neighborhood that we want to that we get the most bang for our bucks. If that's, I think it's always been a question of economics. I mean, Winthrop has always been Winthrop, right? Whether it was 1991 or whether it's 2017. And it's just, Churchill, Winthrop, Briarcliff, those areas. I just think it's a question of economics that why you see places like Johnson and, Sherman Avenue and Van Buren and Vandalinda changing, where you see a different mix of people, but you don't see it in certain neighborhoods. I just don't think that it's any kind of enclave that people try to make up. That's just.
You used up your spot there.
I did. That was my 3 minutes.
Yeah, but I didn't have mine.
You didn't talk?
I didn't talk.
Oh, my God. I'm so sorry. Now you get to go last.
I'm going to talk. I'll be last. I like to say a couple things. One is that every time we sit here, we talk about parking in some way or other. And this is a kind of a creeping illness that's in the township, and we need to spend some time figuring out what we're going to do about it, because eventually it's going to become unmanageable. The second thing is, this council has a chance to put a feather in its cap and actually historicalize Route 4 and the Greenway. And we should figure out how to go about doing that, and also figure out how to acquire Siegel and Siegel's property. A couple of ideas came out. Let's not let them get away, and let's try to do it while we're all sitting here. The last thing is that this has been a very bad sum-up for people to die in Teaneck. And there are 4 people who I know about. All of them were beneficial, activists, useful, helpful people in the township. Abe Martin was a police sergeant. Winnie Farrar, who many of you may not know, was very much involved in an organization called NECO, Northeast Community Organization. And that was during the time when they were blockbusting on the Northeast. And it also was a time when there was an organization called the Teaneck Political Assembly, which is on the west side. And the 2 organizations over time began to work together, and it helped the township kind of get past a very bad time. The third person we've all heard about, and that's Lou Schwartz. But the one I want to mention is Naomi Kramer. Naomi Kramer served a very important position in this room very often. We didn't agree very often, but she had a point of view that was passionate. She had a point of view that needed to be represented. And this council's function is better because of Naomi Kramer and people like her that come to meetings and raise issues. And I'm sad to see her leave.
Well said. Thank you. Next item on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda. Somebody like to move the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to move it.
And the bill list in the amount of?
$4,623,796.89.
So moved.
I'd like to pull the bill list.
Okay. Roll
And
call.
I would like to pull Resolution 181-2017.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Roll call on Resolution 182 and 183-2017, the minutes and the raffle. Councilman, and 184. Correct. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Castle?
Abstention on the minutes, and yes on everything else.
Councilwoman Romney Rice?
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz?
Yes.
Councilman Sullivan?
No on the minutes, yes on everything else.
Deputy Pruitt?
Yes.
Mayor Meady?
Yes.
Consent agenda passes with the exception of 181 in the bill list.
Who pulled 181? Alan?
I did, just to ask the manager for just a little bit more of an explanation of what purchases we're making through the cooperative agreements and how we're benefiting from this.
So very often the township purchases day-to-day items, tires, and different equipment and supplies that DPW may need for the township through cooperative purchasing agreements, items that are really bid by larger organizations, state, county. This resolution, with its schedule in the back as well, will allow us to not be out of compliance with auditing standards by going over the aggregate amounts by which we're allowed to purchase from individual vendors. So if in the aggregate, let's say the $17,500 issue in purchasing, this resolution is going to allow us to be able to purchase from these various vendors, purchase the tires, things that we've purchased every year, all the time, and to make sure that we're in compliance with the law and the auditing standards.
May I move Resolution 1812017 for passage?
Roll call.
Council?
Yes.
Councilwoman on your right?
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz?
Yes.
Councilman Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Pruitt?
Yes.
Mayor Hamidi?
Yes.
Resolution passes.
Great. Bill list, what are the issues?
Yes. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 reasons I pulled the bill list. I think the first one could probably be disposed of rather quickly. It would just require some clarification from the manager. On page 163 of the bill list, TD equipment, it's $89,119.
Yeah, that's a payment on a fire truck.
Okay.
And we're on our last few payments, and it's a rescue vehicle that was purchased prior to 2007.
Okay. The other 3 can probably be addressed in short form by the township attorney. I'm troubled to see that we are paying approximately $30,000 to past legal counsel. On page 126, we're paying $8,000 to Genova Burns, who we haven't had as an attorney for quite some time. On page 177, we're paying roughly $21,000 to Winnie Banta, who we've just essentially done away with and hired their attorney, and that's a
So
that's a
those
$21,000
involve
bill.
cases that they're still involved with. All the new cases are going to be going to our existing attorney. There are some cases that they're working on and trying to bring to closure.
It's actually a cost-saving measure that we discussed. That I'm making my appointment when you questioned me, Councilman Castle, about the transfer of files, and I indicated that the existing litigation was going to stay, for the most part, we've taken a couple cases, but for the most part, staying with the event for that exact reason, so that we don't have duplicated efforts. And as far as Genova Burns go, there's still conflict counsel for the township, and they were involved in the matter, but we're still conflict counsel very recently.
Okay, so the retaining Bill Rupp on those particular issues didn't prevent this particular bill from happening. Because if he was leading the effort at Winnie Banta and then he came over to Chasen, I would have thought that for these issues, these would have been brought over as well.
No, those are cases that Bill Rupp was not in.
Got it.
That Dennis Haraka or Roy Johnson or one of the other counsel over at Winnie Banta was in.
Got it.
Did you send out a memo? I thought we discussed this at the last meeting that I wasn't at. Did you put together that a memo of all litigation, that everything that's going on still? Because my understanding is that the Genova Burns cases from the tax bill, that they're no longer sitting on there because we don't need anybody there, correct? Okay, so and those bills are still outstanding, or there's any more outstanding, or no?
There's one September bill, August bill for the last bit of work that they did that I received today. But I didn't see the time enough to put it on the list.
And what case, if you can just send council a list of things that Winnie Banta is still handling, and the things that you took over to your firm.
And then the last issue, John, you can probably handle this in short form as well. I know that we just done the retainer agreement for 20 and change, but there was I'm assuming there are litigation matters that are almost $10,000 on page 116 as well.
The bills that are on for my firm?
Yeah.
One of them is, the one bill is for the retainer, and the other bill is for, I believe, it's June labor. So it's existing bill.
Okay, but then moving forward, we won't have any additional line items because they've been merged, right?
Well, I keep all of the matters separately billed.
Okay, so I was under the impression that we merged, that the agreement was to merge general representation and labor representation, and that it was negotiated that those things fall under an umbrella that is a single retainer agreement. So I'm confused as to why there would be a separate $10,000 charge for labor if those are under the same umbrella, and our existing retainer agreement is supposed to be pretty much inclusive, like belts and suspenders, with the exception of litigation.
Your existing retainer agreement did not, again, before obviously did not include labor, as I was the separate labor counsel
Yep.
At the time. When we became counsel for the township, that remained the same situation. The retainer, as I believe was said during the vote, was for, it was the exact same retainer that the agreement had before that we signed. So we're doing the same work that the agreement was doing for that number of 20,000 changes.
Yep.
And in addition, there are other matters that are outside the scope of the retainer. You want me to do one bill with everything on one bill, we're glad to do it, but I think it makes it much more simple to give you a broken down bill by matter.
All right. I got to go back and look at that, because I'd written down whether or not we were getting a better deal and everything was coming under one retainer, and I thought that the affirmation at that meeting was that that's exactly what would happen. So, but there was no detail on the bill list as to what the 9746 was for. So I'm happy to have the clarity now. Other than that, I'll just be voting no on the Bergen County Humane Society bill of $4,000.
Move the bill list.
I'll make a motion to move bills.
Second. Roll call.
Councilman Castle?
On the bill list, no on Bergen County Humane Society. I'm going to abstain on the legal bills, and yes on everything else.
Councilman Ron-Rice?
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz?
Yes.
Councilman Sullivan?
No.
Deputy Mayor Pruitt?
Yes.
Mayor Hamidi?
Yes.
Bill is adopted.
Okay, I'd like to move ordinance 282017 and ordinance number 292017 for introduction.
I'll read them by title, Mayor. Quickly, ordinance 28-2017, ordinance amending section 36-11.2 of Division 1 of Article 2 of Chapter 36 entitled Traffic of the Township Code, adding restricted on-street parking spaces for handicapped at 210 Robinson Street.
Oh, wait.
And ordinance number 29-2017, an ordinance amending section 36-12 of Division 2 and Article 36-20.2 of Division 3 of Chapter 36 entitled Traffic of the Township Code respecting parking on certain days at certain times along a portion of Sterling Place.
You want me to?
Second, but just a question regarding the purpose and what change is being made in 292017. I know it has something to do with Sterling Place, but I don't know what it was, what's being changed from. I just want to get clarification.
Okay, on Sterling Place, the original ordinance that was put forth allowed some parking spaces to be in front of the building, and they shouldn't be there. So it's really a correction, so that no one's parking in front of the building.
Done? Okay.
Just need a second?
Second.
Roll call.
I didn't hear my name. I heard you start to say it. I just
Sorry,
was
Councilman
questioning.
Council.
Yes, to introduction.
Councilwoman Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz?
Yes.
Councilman Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Pruitt?
Yes.
Mayor Hamidi?
Yes.
Ordinances are duly introduced.
Anybody want to do anything else? No. Motion to adjourn?
Mr. Mayor, just as much as I would love to adjourn and get home a little bit earlier, we didn't go through the full manager's report. Again, there's some other items on the that were not listed as to.
Okay, yeah, I can go with it. Park Avenue, we did a.
I saw the sign. It says slow down.
Yes, we did do a study on Park Avenue. I don't have Park Avenue in front of me.
William, I think one of the things is that I've had many requests now with conversations with you about speed bumps, right? And talking to DPW and looking at the facts of understanding what's going to happen with speed bumps, I think that, giving a report why Englewood does it and nobody else does it is very important for council to understand that this is not something that we're going to be putting in or implementing. Also with Park Avenue. No, I'm talking about speed bumps. We've had different. You have stop signs, and just to piggyback on Park Avenue, spoke to like 3 or 4 friends of mine who was talking about who live on Park Avenue for the last 25 years. Says, what's going on with the drag racing? I haven't. They're like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. So I'm not saying that you're not talking to different people, or I'm not talking to different people. But I'm just saying I'm not getting those complaints, and I get complaints from everything from the DMV to everything that happens in Washington to everything else that people think that I can fix, and they know how to get in touch with me. So I'm just, I don't want to be in a position where we're using an elephant gun to shoot a fly. So
that's why we have a parking study, right?
Yeah, we do have a parking study. It wasn't listed for me to talk about. I was prepared the other night. I believe the average speed was around 24 miles per hour, 22 or 24. The end result is that, the study didn't reveal a major speeding problem there. We figured that the first thing we should do is enforcement.
Yeah.
And
I think
that's
the same
what they're
person
working on.
who's drag racing on Park Avenue is probably the same person who's doing it by the orange vehicle that's doing it by off of Route 4.
The most important thing, if someone's drag racing, the residents need to call the police.
Please.
That's the most important thing is to call. We'll send an officer out there. If they happen to see the vehicle, give the police a description. Police riding in all areas of town, they may come upon a vehicle. I would almost guarantee it's someone that lives around there that travels the road every day. That's usually what's occurring on our streets. It's not people from out of town most of the time. If you want to go over, we can go over the
Yeah, real quick, whatever we got.
yeah, just a couple items. The parking survey on Sherman, we're done with that. We have an ordinance coming, a letter to New Jersey Transit to request a bus for shuttle service. That's something we're working on. Also, I'm speaking with Millennium Strategies about any grant opportunities. Holy Name Hospital, these are things that are pending. Holy Name Hospital would be in contact with Holy Name Hospital to seek support for a shuttle bus. A gentleman at the last meeting brought a concern about PSE&G and gas leaking on Lambert Road. I called PSE&G the next day. They went out there and didn't locate any gas leaks. And we're preparing a letter to the county regarding their formula for charging for animal control. And that's it.
Great. Go ahead.
With all the conversation about traffic, just wanted to mention that schools will be reopening, so hopefully people will be driving extra cautious, and welcome back to school.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Motion to adjourn.
Anyone else?
Second.
So moved. All in favor? Aye.
Very good.
Any opposed? What happened? I gave him upstairs. Yeah, she signed everything. I signed everything.
That was good. I'm just